the challenge with teaching Sufism is that, these non-dual self-knowledge teachings, if a Zen master teaches it, people are used to hearing a Buddhist Zen master teaching these kinds of teachings. People are used to hearing a yogi, for example, a yogi and mystic teaching these kinds of teachings. People are used to hearing like a Swami from Advaita Vedanta or something like this, teaching these kinds of non-dual self-knowledge teachings. But a Sufi who says La ilaha illallah and teaches about self, that is, people are not used to hearing that. Because anytime you hear Allah, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, people associate that with, dogmatism and, Wahhabism and these sorts of, you can say, institutionalized forms of religions, or basically people who want to control the narrative of the teachings of the Prophet. So all the prophets came with self-knowledge. All of the prophets came to teach you about yourself. There's never ever been a single prophet who didn't come here to teach you about yourself. All prophets taught transformation, which is what we know as tazkiyah. In fact, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his path was known as tazkiyah before Islam was revealed in the Quran, which means peace. Tazkiyah means transformation. So, as a Sufi, one either works with kind of this traditional way of teaching it, or one sort of teaches it in a more spiritual way. But either way, people are not really used to hearing, from a Quranic concept or a Quranic perspective, these types of non-dual self-knowledge teachings. Because immediately when you say Quran or Allahu Akbar, it produces an association in people's minds of, men with long beards who are very dogmatic and angry, and usually kind of anti-women. Not all of them, but many of them are. So this is the challenge. But essentially, the inner being works in the same way, and this is very important to understand. Why are all religions, there is no really such thing as religion, there's only spirituality. But okay, let's play with that thought. Why are all the religions the same? Because your inner being works in the same way. Anyone who meditates very deeply, which is basically a deep process of introspection. Meditation is introspection, a deep process of looking into yourself and learning about yourself. This is what is meditation, essentially. Anyone who goes through this process of introspection is gonna find the same conclusion, that the inner being works in the same way. My inner being works in the same way as the inner being of a yogi, or the inner being of a Buddhist Zen master, or the inner being of a Tao master, or the inner being of a shaman, or the inner being of a Christian monk who sits and meditates, or the inner being of any person throughout history who has ever journeyed inwards. You are going to find the same reality. This is how I and you, we can connect, because it doesn't work like this, that you have a certain fear works in a certain way for you and fear works in another way for me. No. Fear is fear. It manifests differently for me and you, but fear essentially is the same thing. And if I meditate and look deeply into my fear, I will come to the same conclusion as any other a spiritual person who looks deeply into themselves about their fear, because the inner being is one. The inner being of the human being is one. The inner being of the human being is one. I can put it in Arabic language, like Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam did. I can put it in Sanskrit, like, for example, the Buddha did. But the inner being is one, and it works in the same way. And anyone who journeys deep within is going to find that this being works in the same way. For example, what did Osho say? He said that the mind should not be the master, the heart should be, not the mind. This is pure Sufi teachings, because the light of higher consciousness is in the heart, not in the mind. This is what the Buddhists say. Love, compassion. Love or compassion, Wadud, Rahman, is all the light of Allah in your heart, like Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said in Hadith Qudsi, where Allah said, He cannot be fit into the heavens or the earth. Neither the heaven or the earth can contain me, only the heart of the believer can. It's a different language, different traditions, but the inner being is one. It works in the same way. Our fear works in the same way. Anger is anger. It doesn't matter if you are African or Arab or Christian or whatever. Anger is anger. Fear is fear. Hatred is hatred. Jealousy is jealousy. It doesn't matter where you're from. Jealousy is jealousy. Happiness is happiness. It doesn't matter if you call it Ananda or Nirvana or heaven or happiness. It's happiness, bliss. You see the thing. Ignorance is ignorance. It doesn't matter if it's called Jahiliyyah or whatever. So this is why the teachings are one and the path is one. There are different ways of teaching it, because I look like this. There's not a single human being on earth who looks like me or has my manifestation. Everyone is unique, but the spirit is one. So the forms there are 7.5 billion different forms of human beings on earth, but the spirit is one. The spirit is one. Otherwise we could never connect to one another. Otherwise there would be many realities. There's not many realities. The ultimate reality is one. There's not I have my truth, someone else has their truth. Yes, we have our perception of the truth. That is very true. But ultimate reality is the same. Fear works in the same way. Hatred, jealousy works in the same way. Love is love. Knowledge is knowledge. Wisdom is wisdom. Doesn't matter if you are a Tibetan monk and call it wisdom, or if you are a Sufi and you call it hikmah. Wisdom is wisdom. Meditation is meditation. It doesn't matter if you call it muraqabah or dhyana or gum or mindfulness. It's the same thing. Being in the present moment, observing yourself and getting familiar with yourself, a deep sense of introspection. So we are essentially, as Sufis, teaching the same teachings that the other traditions are, just in a different language and in a different cultural setting and in a different type of tradition. But it is essentially in the core the same teaching, and this can be also confirmed again by Sahih Bukhari, where Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said that all the prophets were of paternal brothers. Their deen is one, meaning their religion is one. All the prophets taught the same deen. All of them. And Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said in another hadith that there has been 124,000 prophets who were sent. And the Quran says that they sent prophets through all the nations of earth. So only expecting prophets to have been speaking Arabic is quite ignorant, actually, because there was no prophet who spoke Arabic before. Prophet Muhammad is the Arabic speaking prophet. All the other prophets spoke different languages. Jesus spoke, or Isa spoke Aramaic. Moses probably spoke Hebrew. Some prophets probably spoke Sanskrit related traditions. Their teaching is one. And for this path of Sufism, there is one thing that is required, which is the difference, you can say, between a spiritual person and a religious person. For a spiritual person, there is a light of introspection which is lit, which makes the spiritual person be inwardly turned and see herself or see himself. Without this ability, the person will be ignorant to themselves, and it doesn't matter how much one tries to make them see themselves, they can still not see themselves. And this is also what the Quran says. And those who don't believe, it doesn't matter what you say to them, they will not believe. Allah has set a seal on their eyes and ears and heart. So people who are sealed like this, they cannot see themselves, and there's no point in sort of in that sense spending too much energy trying to teach spirituality to them until the veils are lifted. So hopefully this video has been helpful. Assalamu alaikum.